right. Thanks, Hanny. You should be all able to hear me. I'm going to share my screen here now.
Yes, we do hear you. Thank you, Branden. Yes.
All right. So the presentation today that Barton Malow Company is presenting is called Breaking Down the Work, Work Packaging to Support Earned Value Management. Again, I'm Branden Clements. I'm a project controls manager at Barton Malow Company. And so when Hanny, reached out to us about doing a presentation, for this event, we naturally thought of two topics. We thought of advanced work packaging and earned value management. And, really at Barton Malow, we've been using both of these methodologies, across various projects with the goal to improve cost and schedule certainty. But really to implement either of these effectively, you need a well-defined work breakdown structure and well-defined work packages. So those are really the two elements, to help, implement these management techniques. A lot of people, hear work breakdown structure or work package and they're, immediately confused or suspicious. And so I want to spend, a good portion of this meeting really walking through, how do you develop a work breakdown structure and how do you define work packages? So with that, let's go ahead and dive in here. So I'll start just by grounding everyone with some key definitions. We'll start really talking about what is the definition of a work breakdown structure. We'll talk about work package, and then we'll touch on the concept of earned value. So what is a work breakdown structure? So, if we read the definition, work breakdown structure is a hierarchical decomposition of the total scope of work to be carried out by the project team to accomplish project objectives and create the required deliverables. Another way to describe it is a work breakdown structure is a higher level project artifact that supports the creation of schedules and budgets. So just to break down the definition a little bit, decomposition here is a really important term, and it's really the technique of dividing and subdividing the project scope and project deliverables into really smaller and more manageable parts. The level to which you decompose a project is really driven by the amount of control you need for that. So it really depends on the type of project and the complexity of it. For how far down it's decomposed. A few other things, total scope of work. So again, the work breakdown structure needs to be all encompassing. So if it's missing an element, you need to add that element into the WBS. Project objectives. Obviously, if the work doesn't contribute to the project objectives, it doesn't need to be included as part of the work breakdown structure. And then lastly, the term deliverables is really important here too, because work breakdown structure focuses on the work, as in terms of a deliverable. So we'll come back to this definition of work and deliverable as we're going through the presentation. So the next key term, actually, I want to share with you an example of a work breakdown structure. So typically work breakdown structures are represented as a tree structure. And here there is an example of an aircraft, system, and they've basically broken down these into the different components of an aircraft system. So you have from the left, project management, you have training, data, the actual vehicle, support, facilities, et cetera. And then each of those, what we call a major deliverable is broken into, a component level. And again, this work breakdown structure would follow the definition of a work breakdown structure. It's decomposed, it's total scope of the work, it's focused on the objectives, and it's deliverable based. So just to provide an example here, you've probably all seen an example like this before. The next term that I want to share with you is the work package. So, generally it's understood that the work package is a deliverable at the lowest level of the WBS. And we also define it as the work required to, complete a specific job or process, such as like a report, a design, documentation, piece of hardware or service. So it's really like a deliverable at the lowest level. You know, I sometimes I like to think about this as like, you know, it's work that can be, you know, managed by one person. You know, so in the construction industry, it could be a project manager or a superintendent. You know, the actual work in a work package, though, might be performed by many people. But I like that definition of being managed by one person. So, you know, this presentation's focused a lot on project controls, and scheduling is one part of that. And oftentimes people get confused about, you know, what is a work package versus what is a schedule activity. So, you know, the work package is really focused on the deliverable. So in this case, you can see here at the top of the screen, we have caissons, which are deep foundations. So that's the deliverable. You know, Barton Malow is installing caissons. The actual activity is, you know, implies action. So you know, the activity says, okay, I'm going to install caissons 1 to 12, and then I'm going to install caissons 9 to 16, et cetera. So the important distinction here is that the work package is really a noun. It's the object that's being delivered, and the activity is actually the verb of what are you as the company doing to accomplish the work. So I think that's another important term that sometimes is confused. So the next topic here is really, you know, earned value analysis, and Hanny touched on this a bit, but really it's a method that allows, you know, the project manager to measure the amount of work performed on a project beyond the basic review of cost and schedule reports. So it's a really way to integrate, you know, cost and schedule together to come up with meaningful metrics. And just to highlight the importance of the work package in earned value analysis, I just have an example here that I've copied from PMI. And, you know, their example is, okay, if the work package is to install, you know, 500 new computers in an office, and let's say 350 computers are installed, you know, our progress is 70%, you know, of the work is complete. So if our budget for the work package is $200,000, you know, 200,000 times, you know, 70% is 140,000, and that's the earned value. So that's just one component of earned value. You have planned value and the actual cost. But just to share with you, like the work breakdown structure and the work package are fundamental to, you know, doing earned value analysis. So I think with that, we're going to switch over into an example of how to develop a work breakdown structure and how to define work packages. So, you know, we basically simplified, you know, the 5 steps to creating a work breakdown structure. So the first one is the project. That's kind of a given. It's the first level of the work breakdown structure. So it's typically the project name represents that. The second item we're going to talk about is the project life cycle. The third item we're going to talk about is defining the major project deliverables. Then we're going to break those down into subcomponents, and then we're going to finally get to the work package level. So what I'm sharing with you here is the project life cycle for capital projects. And what from the left to the right, where the project would start is in some kind of validation or conceptual design phase where the owner's validating their particular project. You know, then once a certain level of scope definition is reached, it moves more into like a design development and construction documents where those documents are created. From there, obviously procurement can start, and then that supports construction, and then moving into commissioning, and then finally close out. So again, the life cycle of the project, though, really depends on the project delivery method, you know, that typically the owner decides. And so it has a substantial impact on the phases of the project. So just to give you an example, you know, if an owner has a design bid build delivery method where they've hired the architect and done the design ahead of getting the contractor on board, you know, the contractor's representation of that project life cycle would start after design. So we've kind of X'd out the design phase and said, okay, well, really the contractor's getting involved from procurement onward. So again, it depends on the project type and delivery method for this life cycle. So that's from a capital project perspective, but also, products and software also have life cycles. So for anyone, software developers or IT managers that are on the call here, you also have a software development life cycle that you're familiar with. It starts with requirements analysis, planning, software design, development, testing, and deployment. So again, this methodology, even though I'm showing the example from a construction standpoint, can be accomplished also from a software side. So after we define the project life cycle, then we really go into identifying the major deliverables. And in this case, what I'm sharing with you here is a site plan with kind of the key project items here. So we have a building expansion number 1, number 2, parking and drives, and site utilities. So those are like the major deliverables that this construction project has to deliver. The way we typically represent that then is in a tree structure. As you can see on the right, we take those major deliverables, we represent them as the tree structure. An important thing to keep in mind here is that we need to follow the 100% rule. And this goes back to the total scope definition. So really the WBS should represent all of the project work. So in this case, if there was some kind of substation area that was part of this project that I don't have represented on the site plan, I need to add that substation as part of my work breakdown structure. So that's just an example. So keep in mind the 100% rule. The WBS has to contain 100% of the project. So then, once we get the major project deliverables defined, basically we're going to break those down into subcomponents here. So what I've done is taken the building expansion number 2, broken that down into really the core and shell and the major work phases. So you can see building expansion 2 has core and shell, it has level 1, it has the equipment platform, and it has the roof. And the important part here is each of these contains all of the items that are sitting on it or above it. Like for instance, the roof WBS includes the roof membrane and all the equipment attached to it. So again, we're following that 100% rule of capturing the whole scope. Okay, so let's kind of put together the items we just went through. We talked about the building expansion project. We talked about the project life cycles, which is level 2. We talked about defining the major deliverables, which is level 3. And then we talked about level 4, which is identifying our subcomponents. So the next part we're going to walk through here is basically defining the work package, which again is really the key to advanced work packaging or earned value management. So at this level for defining work packages, I really recommend using an industry best practice or standard. In the case of construction industry, we have a Uniformat 2 classification, which actually lists out essentially work packages here. You can see that level 2, on the slide here, is really the level that I often find to be the most useful for defining work packages. So again, this is there's probably a similar thing for software and other industries, and I recommend trying to find that reference. Being able to use the same industry practice across your various projects and teams can really be a benefit. So again, here we're at the work package level. And just to kind of bring it all together here, so if we look at foundations, and then I start to define, okay, I have a work package number 1, it's my caissons number 1 to 32, and I start to define a budget for that, and I start to define my schedule activities. I have essentially all the key ingredients to do earned value. So let's just go to a quick kind of example of how we've used this before. So for our project that we had here, we took the work packages, which you can see on the left here, matching our Uniformat. We took our P6 schedule information, which had start and finish dates and months. We had manpower estimates in terms of hours. We had cost. We calculated men per month. And then we use that to come up with a planned value curve, which is, really a key component of the earned value tracking and measurement here. So I am right
So
at.
I'm sorry. Yeah, I was going to tell you to stop at the previous.
I'm right at. Sorry, Handy, that took a
previous
little longer than I
slide.
thought.
No, that's okay. Can you go back to the previous slide? So my question is this done in Excel, or what software do you use for this?
This is done in Excel. You can do it in P6. So it kind of depends on the flexibility the team wants with.
Okay. So I know P6 can do that. So that's one of the things. And just to give an introduction to people that are listening in, me and Branden worked on a DTE project, and I really loved the way that Branden did his scheduling, because he did a very professional job on the whole getting the team together and the buy-in from all the subcontractors on the schedule that he developed. So that's one of the key things, is that once people see that you are developing the schedule in a professional manner, they believe more into that project and they want to achieve it. So one thing that we used in our project, Branden, was the AWP, Advanced Work Packaging, from CII, Construction Industry Institute, for the DTE job. Do you guys use that in Barton Malow a lot, or in other projects, or is that something that just happened in DTE because DTE required it?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we really use that technique, I'd say, on select projects. We've used it in a few places, I think, rather successfully. And really, we have an internal initiative to try to roll that out to more projects. So there was a team that really worked to kind of formalize that knowledge and document it so we could share it with more
I'm sure all our audience would have many more questions for you. Just reminding everybody that your questions should come through our chat for now. And then once we open the lines for discussions, and then you can open your mic.